Hello, today I thought I'd talk to you about security. We're going to dig into something very specific, and I'm going to try to not to go into the highly technical aspects of this. We may make other videos on this if that is of interest to you, of course. If it is not, then this is more of an overview as to one of the key pieces in this day and age that you need to have in place. And if you don't know it exists, you might not be looking for it, and you might not even understand why you need it. So let's take a look at something called MDR. So that is Management Detection and Response. And the whole point of this is to provide you with one more tool in your arsenal to defend yourself against things like ransomware, plain attacks, viruses, malware, that sort of thing. So if you like these videos, please give us a thumbs up, and of course subscribe. That really helps us out, especially for a small channel like ours, and we so appreciate it. So let's go ahead and discuss MDR. Now there's a variety of providers out there that do provide solutions, and you can get solutions for, obviously if you're a very large firm, then you're probably not the key audience that I'm trying to talk to today, because you probably have not only the budget, but you probably have the internal people that can advise you and understand what all of these things do and how you can best manage and best integrate with your existing system. Now, for those of you who are in smaller spaces or even medium spaces, where you've got potentially dozens, hundreds of PCs, mixes of devices, whether the Macs PCs, iPhones, iPads, and so forth, well, you're always on the hunt for something that will be a way of protecting yourself. Now, I've mentioned in other videos, and I've done a lot of videos on specifically things like WatchGuards and other brands of firewalls. So a firewall is not a bad idea, and this does not compete or replace, or this is really in complement to. So really, an MDR solution, and it is a solution or a service. It's not a box that you buy and you put in like a firewall or some kind of anyway, the point is, it really is a solution, and these companies have slightly different approaches to them. Most will provide you or offer you a 24/7 surveillance or monitoring of your environment. Now, this is the key point. So if you get hacked at 1 a.m. in the morning, I'm hoping that some of you get some sleep. And the drawback to that is you might not be aware that there's something wrong till next morning. Now, it's happened to client that I know that actually got hacked while I was on one of their systems. We saw it in real time, and we were able to counter it there and then. So it's one thing when it happens in real time, you happen to spot it and you say, hey, why did I just send out 700 emails? Or why did my computer just suddenly log into this weird Russian site or whatever it happens to be, then of course you can counter it, you can pull the plug, you can do things, you can react. Now, of course, if it happens on a server that no one logs on to really, because it's maybe a database server in the back end and sporadically someone goes and looks, well, that thing gets infected or that thing gets attacked and all of a sudden it starts misbehaving, someone needs to know that it's happening and someone needs to cut it off. In a lot of cases, it is true that most of your for example, your firewall might see strange traffic. So if you're doing things like geofencing, which I highly recommend, where you can have your firewall say, hey, I do not want traffic going to a specific place in the world. Like if you're not conducting business in, let's say, Iran and Russia and so forth, well, there's no reason for packets to be going there or to be received from there. So it does reduce your footprint on the internet, and that's bottom line, that's one of the things that I'm going to just throw out there right away, that you need to try to have as few services available or open to the internet, fewest ports, the fewest, basically you want to just reduce your footprint. You want as little visible from the internet as possible. If you have things like remote desktop turned on and you open the default port, you will be attacked. Someone will try, they will get very creative, they'll call the company, find out who works there, try to get, guess what the usernames are, and then they have to guess the password. But the point is brute force can work if given enough time. So I'm not going to get into the best practices and so forth, because specifically I want to talk about the MDR, because that's the whole point. So part of that is there's an aspect of an SOC there, which basically is the idea is that you've got a group within the service that is responsible for looking at your environment. So they put it up either on a screen there, and you've got statistics going and they can see things. The other thing is, obviously, they've got algorithms built in. So what are they going to look at? Well, I mentioned geofencing. They will look at geolocation. So if you are out of the US or out of the UK or out of wherever you happen to be watching this from, it might not be reasonable or expected to have traffic from, let's say, Australia. So if that happens, then that might raise some red flags. If you're a flower shop, if you're a manufacturer and you're producing widgets, maybe your clientele is not in Australia and you have no business getting visitors or things like that. And again, the other thing is it will also look at the type of traffic that you are generating. So not only what's coming in, so if it is intrusive, if it's an attack. The other thing is you might have things like peer-to-peer communications trying to get out. If you haven't configured your firewall properly, for example, and you haven't filtered a lot of the stuff out, maybe it's an accident, maybe it's something got upgraded at some point, and it is possible, trust me, I see it all the time, where upgrades will go and remove check marks, so put things back to default. So you might have gone through a list early on and say, hey, I don't want the following, and years later you realize that, why is this open? And you can go back to your list and say, yeah, we checked it 2 years ago. But that's why you want to sporadically go back and recheck things. But the point is, the MDR would be there to notice these things and hopefully to catch these things. So if some intruder, whether it be a machine or an AI or a human, the point is to try to get that information, especially when you have a multitude, you've got the wrong kind of packets going, and you've got location is weird, or you have a user that is physically sitting in Los Angeles and all of a sudden their Office 365 gets logged in somewhere in Nigeria. Well, it makes no sense because the person can't be in two places at once. So that's another one of these triggers that could signal that something is wrong in your environment, and specifically with that one account in my example. The idea is to really have a quick identification and to respond to the security incident in real time. So that is what the MDR really is all about. It's to, reduce the response time to the security threat. Now, the other thing too is you need the expertise, and that's where the MDR team comes in. It's really important at that point. They bring in the expertise of handling the complex security problems that you suddenly have, and they will know what to do, whether they remove a token, whether they, and so forth. Also, overall, it does solidify or does help your security posture because they will review a lot of the communications they get. As soon as you turn this on, I have one in my environment. As soon as you do, they'll say, hey, you've got these extra IP addresses, these extra machines that don't have agents on them if you're using an agent-based system. And the point is that it will, snoop around your network, and it will start to notice things and say, hey, is this normal? Why is this off? And how come this isn't documented? And so forth. So you might find out that individuals maybe have brought in, I had one scenario where a large firm had very bizarre things on their network. It turns out someone had brought in a router from home to be able to, they just wanted extra plugs in their office, and they brought in a router and they plugged it in, and their router was infected and was just doing all kinds of crazy things internally. And IT didn't understand, didn't realize there was that device, and they weren't looking for a device. They were trying to figure out why, things were happening that they couldn't explain. And, it had a DHCP service on, and it had all these things that inside of a large environment is not great when all of a sudden you've got a couple PCs that are picking up the DHCP on the little tiny router somewhere that no one knows about. That does create mysteries. So in this case, service like this would have caught that on, that, hey, we've got this extra device, and hey, by the way, it's doing this. That's one of the key features. Obviously, the other thing is it does augment if you do have a security expert, or if you have a small security team within your organization. This will, augment their capabilities. They'll be able to, go through more logs, and so it just adds to the resources you have available within your firm. Now, at the bottom of this, there are compliance regulations and so forth that need to be adhered to, and this is one good way to add to that regulatory requirement that you have. So whether it's because you're in a specific industry where it's required, whether it's you're inside of a country that requires it, well, that is another reason to have that. Obviously, at the end of the day, it goes back to peace of mind. Now, I'm not going to go through specific products. I'm going to try to stay out of picking one specifically. I just thought I'd bring up sort of some of the larger ones are the ones that I know of, and you've got CloudStrike, which is very well known. There's Sentinel-1 as well, and if you go back to some of the other ones, there is Rapid7. Some of these, what you will find is if you're a very small firm, or if you might not be their key target clientele for these folks, and they may have certain minimum requirements. Some of them might be 50, some of them might be 350, some of them. So again, you'll have to check it out. Now, it does become a little difficult to understand the implications. The best way to do it is to get a demo and find out what does the platform look like. What dashboard do they provide, and what kind of response time they have, and so forth. But you need to feel comfortable. What you don't want to do is get a tool that was designed for a firm with 30,000 employees that requires an entire team to run and understand, and you get reports that are so not only from a volume point of view, but from a complexity point of view, laborious to read through, then that will not only discourage you. I see a lot of firms that put in different features, whether it be MDR, whether it be a super high-end firewall or something like that. They get all these great reports, and usually within weeks, months, they kind of start giving up. It's like doing a scan, for example. You're supposed to scan for vulnerabilities. That's a whole different subject. But the point is if you're going to be getting an 800-page report and you've got all these things to fix, a lot of them, especially the smaller firms, just tend to, they try it first and then kind of give up, and you're back to, you've got a bunch of fancy tools on paper, but you're just not able or willing to use them anymore because of lack of resources or expertise internally, because sometimes it does get very difficult, and sometimes you really don't know why things, it's one thing to say, hey, you're subject to the following vulnerability, and you have to dig, you have to put some time into where did it come from, how did I get this, is this, sometimes it's black and white, it's real easy, and you say, hey, I just need to patch the Windows. Traditionally, by the way, when I go down that path, before you do all your scans, try to bring everything up to the latest patches, so this way you eliminate a whole bunch on those reports. My little 2 cents there. So the one that I use, and if anybody out there is interested in Blackpoint Cyber, I can certainly hook you up with these guys. I know them very well, and that's what we use. But again, I've seen all different solutions out there, and I can't say that one is spectacularly better than the rest. It all depends on your environment. It all depends what you need to monitor. It all depends on the number of users. It depends on your ability to understand the security. Some of them will be more technical. Some of them will be, they're more, dealing with all the issues and providing you with results, and they're doing most of the grunt work, as opposed to some of them are expecting you to understand what all of the different acronyms are and what all of the different things that might happen in your environment. So if you're smaller, or if you don't have a security team, or if all of this was done by external consultants in your environment, for example, you may not have as much expertise as some of these larger players expect you to have internally. So what you don't want is to get something and then to go back and have to hire, again, more external people to figure out what the report says and what you're supposed to do about it. So you may either miss some of the information or misunderstand the severity of some of the issues that you may have. In some cases, it's anywhere from this is not good to have, as opposed to this is being hacked right now, and you have to make sure that you understand, is this sort of like not best practice to have? Is this something that will within days or weeks or months be a huge problem, or is this something we already had a problem because someone has gotten in and now we need to counter this. So that's roughly what MDR is. Hopefully that helps you out. Leave some comments below. I'm going to cut it off here, and I may dig into one of these, potentially even invite one of the manufacturers on with me to really dig deeper and show you some of the back end as to what it does look like, what some of the reports look like. But again, leave some comments. I'd love to see what you think of this. But go look at MDR and let me know which one you picked and why. I'd love to hear about it. My name is Bob Pellerin. I'm CTOBOB, of course. And you can look me up at CTOBOB.com. I do post different articles and so forth once in a while there as well. So we hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.